Hey, folks. Lily, did you have anything else at the beginning to tell our guys?
Oh, well, I'm Lily. I work with the Catoosa County Extension Office, and I am the assistant here. Um, and I'm just here to kind of listen, I guess, and help with any
All right. Well,
flaws we got
folks,
going on.
I appreciate y'all taking time to join in today's backyard flock class. I'm Wade Hutchison, the Ag and Natural Resource Agent in Walker County. Been doing this about 25 years, but have just moved to Walker County just over 2 years ago. Truly like it up here in the northwest corner of the state. And tonight we're talking about starting a backyard flock. So I've got 60 slides, and I do not intend to spend 60 minutes on each slide. So there we go. During the talk, we're a small group. If you've got questions, unmute yourself and let's talk about your question while we're there on it. If you don't want to unmute, you can type it in the chat box. And if we don't catch it during the talk, we'll go back and catch it after it's over. So let's roll with this thing. You know, there are many reasons to have a backyard flock, and I'm sure you've worked through all your reasons. I don't know when chickens became cool. They may have been cool for always, but no doubt about it, chickens are one of the new cool things to do. We have chickens were domesticated centuries ago because man has a need for that natural meat and an egg source. There's a whole lot of fun and pleasure to be derived from having farm animals around, but be reminded they are livestock and they do come with some care concerns. And most folks get into backyard chickens for the source of fresh eggs. So that is a convenience factor. And if you let some of those layers become stock for the chicken pot, then they're also can be consumed, the meat can be consumed, or you can raise broilers for that. But from just a perspective of raising inexpensive eggs, probably your backyard flock eggs are going to be the most expensive eggs you ever buy. I know they will for the first year. At, just to and this slide set's got some I hope got some fun and some attempts to dispel some urban myths and legends about chickens. And I should have thanked my colleague Dr. Casey Ritz earlier on. Many of the slides that I'm using came from Dr. Ritz, but one of the myths out there is that my backyard flock eggs are going to be healthier, and that simply is not the case. The nutritional level for store-bought or backyard eggs is the same. There's not a bit of difference in the nutritional information or the cholesterol level. Dr. Ritz summed it up the other day just by saying an egg is an egg is an egg. Next slide, you'll see a slight difference in what they're eating. My backyard chickens, because I'm doing it and I'm going to be more careful about it, are going to be safer and healthier for my family. And quite often the opposite is true. Georgia is a great chicken state. We have huge broiler and layer industry in Georgia. And the incidence of problems are more prevalent in a backyard flock simply because those commercial growers go to great lengths to protect their flocks and to protect the products that they are sending into the food chain. Backyard flocks often have inadequate nutrition. They just are not fed properly. Not the right feed, not the right amounts. There's a big myth out there that that hormones have made the modern bird the size that it is. And if you look at this picture, it's genetics and not hormones that have resulted in this modern bird. The carcass, the bird on the left, is a 1957 bird. Through genetics and breeding for a larger bird, we have got to this size. It is genetics, some relation to feed, but this bird on the right was fed the same feed that they fed this bird in 57, and it is genetics that have made the modern bird. Folks will like to think that their backyard eggs are fresher. And unless you're eating the eggs the day that you pick them up, most commercial eggs are usually just as fresh. Commercial eggs are hitting the markets within 1 to 3 days after they are laid. So our commercial eggs are just as fresh. Better flavor. Dr. Ritz swears up and down that he cannot taste a difference in any egg he's ever scrambled or fried or boiled or had any way he makes it. The eggs are affected a little bit by what they eat. Looking at these eggs across the bottom, the left egg with that white yolk was fed a diet of wheat grains. This egg right here, the second one was on a corn and soy diet. The next egg was, the next two were fed a more natural diet, so their yolk is a little darker, but it's going to taste the same. Their natural diet was a little higher in beta carotenes and energy and protein. And as I said earlier, especially for that first year, once you factor in your birds and your feed cost, you can see that that first year production on a dozen of eggs is going to run somewhere $8 to $12. So keep in mind, there's a lot of other enjoyment factors to be gained from that backyard flock. What about the differences on eggshell color, white or brown or green or blue? They have the same nutritional profile. They're graded on the same scale. So an egg is an egg is an egg. There are some regional preferences as to whether you prefer white or brown eggs, but there's no nutritional difference between the two. A brown egg does have a slightly thicker shell, and brown eggs are more expensive because the hens that lay brown eggs eat more, and they don't lay as much as some of the white egg laying hens do. So brown eggs, and because it's maybe a niche market, brown eggs do tend to sell for a little more. As you're getting into this, I encourage you to think about a couple of things. One is, why you're doing this. Is it to meet your family needs? Are you wishing to generate enough that you want to have some to sell to friends and neighbors, or maybe carry it to a market, or even start some type of subscription-based ordering? Depending on how you go about it, it's going to dictate some additional needs and maybe records and record keeping. One of the biggest things to keep in mind is whether or not you're even allowed to have chickens based on zoning restrictions for where you're at. In Walker County, if you're zoned ag or AR1, anything but R1, you are allowed to have chickens. And there are only some space requirements, no minimum acreages connected to that. But if you live in one of our zip codes, such as city of Lafayette or Lookout Mountain, Rossville does not allow chickens. Chickamauga, you have to be zoned in an ag zone up in Chickamauga, and in Lafayette, their concern is space requirements. So you have to meet some space requirements. Even in Lookout Mountain, who has recently approved it, you have to apply to have a backyard flock, and it comes with an inspection, and it's an annual application. So you're not in just with that first application. So check with whatever governing authority has your zoning restrictions recorded. There are some ordinances statewide. If it's a governing body, there have been ordinances over many things. I mentioned Lookout Mountain, and they do have a rooster ordinance because of the noise, and that's fairly common throughout the state. Most of the ordinances have been established because of the commercial industry and trying to protect residents. So that's where some of these come in at. Some of the ordinances were developed because of concerns over the smells that come with them, the pests that can come from our feeding habits or lack of good feeding habits or protecting that feed. And even some of these zoning ordinances out there to protect property values. But according to Dr. Ritz and his research, and he has looked at zoning ordinances throughout the nation, he has come to the conclusion that concern over property value is truly unfounded. So if you're gonna start your own backyard flock, be sure to get into it with the right attitude and to make sure that the code enforcement is not going to visit and deliver bad news that you can't have them. Another decision is why are you going to have birds? Do you want the eggs or the meat or both? You just want to have some show chickens, just have a few chickens around to make you for the pleasure they provide. There are layer breeds, there are meat specific breeds, there are some breeds that are dual purpose and provide meat and eggs. Remember too, as you're selecting your chickens, that a bigger bird, and I don't think we're in a cold climate right here where we're at. Most of the breeds, especially the common breeds, will do well in our area. But you decide to move somewhere to a colder climate, those heavier birds, bigger birds, do better in those colder climates. If it's a real active bird, and typically when you buy your birds, there will be a description that is offered, and you can pick up some of these traits from that description. But those real active birds do not like tight confinement, and based on your coop size, and we'll talk about that in a minute, they may be a little bit tight. If you're in a subdivision, urban environment, calmer birds are going to do well there, and a rooster is not a calm bird most times. Your decision on which breed of chicken you get could be based on the egg size that you're after, the color of the egg that you're after. You can kind of see the size and color spectrum for some of the more common breeds right there. So several things to keep in mind when you're selecting your chickens. As I mentioned, they are classified by their use, whether meat birds or laying birds, or those that are going dual purpose, or those that are just ornamental as well. So select the breed that fits your goals and your intentions. There are some 300 poultry breeds, and they are governed by the standard of perfection, which is put out about once every 8 to 10 years, and the 44th edition of the American Standard of Perfection is out there. Some of the common American breeds include the ones that you're seeing here. Quite common are the Wyandottes and Rhode Islands, whether they're red or white Rhode Islands. I see a few Plymouth Rocks. I don't know that I've ever seen either of the other two, and I'm certainly not going to try to discuss every breed that is out there. Some of the English breeds, and many of these I've truly never heard of. Dorking is one, but Orpingtons see quite a bit. They do well in a backyard flock. This Australarp does well in a backyard flock. Red cap, didn't read enough about him, but what a handsome chicken. Just looks like he's wearing that red cap. And then 2 photos of the Sussex breed. Few English breeds, the Cornish, 2 shots of a Cornish hen, and it is from that Cornish cross that our modern broiler has been bred from. That's given us those birds that the industry can grow from egg to a finished broiler in 5 to 6 weeks. And it comes from that Cornish cross. So enough about breeds, I think. Oh, no, the Asiatic, I included these because they're just more handsome birds, but the Brahmin and the Cochin see quite a bit, quite often see Cochins, but they're out there as well. And this frizzle can be expressed in any breed, but certainly some others are more prone to frizzle, or I like to think of it as just a fluff. So if you're into showing chickens, okay, there are breeds just for showing as well. I don't know when it started, but it started crossbreeding chickens, and that ended up in the sex link breed of chickens. And it is a hybrid. We've crossed 2 different breeds to end up with these sex links. Black sex links and red sex link are very common. Next slide shows you that the black sex link is a Rhode Island and a Barred Rock cross. And you can see the others crossing a Rhode Island white with a red. We get the red sex link. And then the Delaware and the Rhode Island cross is the gold, the white Plymouth Rock in New Hampshire, that golden comet. And these can actually be sexed when they're born. If you see the picture on the left, the 2 chicks on the right with the white dot on their head are male black sex links. These 2 would be female. That middle picture, the yellow bird is the female, and the red colored is the male for that red sex link. So, and they have become quite popular sex links. Those are the breed that our one of the breeds that our 4-Hers have in their chicken project. But we're here to talk about good backyard birds. So with Dr. Ritz's advice, I have narrowed my list down to the ones that Dr. Ritz included. The Rhode Island birds, whether red or white, good dual purpose birds, both for eggs and meat. Also on that list, and this is a Rhode Island red on the left. And the one on the right is a Australarp. Let me check my note on that. Yeah, the Australarp on the right. And then the sex links make a good dual purpose bird as well. So throw in a little bit of fun during our talk. And unless you want to raise fertilized eggs, unless you want your hens to lay fertilized eggs, you do not need a rooster. A rooster is not needed in order to get an egg, only if you want a fertilized egg. And if you are going to keep some replacement chicks from your eggs, the hen can either incubate them, sit on them, or you can get an incubator. But you'll need 1 rooster for about every 10 hens if you want fertilized eggs. That nesting box, roughly about 12 by 12, makes a good nesting box size. You can fill it with straw, about half full, shavings or sawdust. Works kind of well, very well rather, but wheat straw works very well. And 1 box, the hens will share a nesting box. 1 box can work for 4 to 5 hens. So you'll need that as you develop your coop, build your coop, and get ready for your chickens. That box, you'd want to keep it, you want to place it about 2 feet off the ground, and it helps that hen, if there's a perch, a place for her to fly up to and land and then walk into it. So a perch out from the front of each box, about 4 inches. The majority of the eggs are going to be laid in the morning, but as a general rule of thumb and good practice is to check that nest twice daily. One, to make sure the eggs are being laid in that nesting boxes. Some hens will find another area, especially if she is a broody hen, really wants to sit on those eggs. You may have to find those eggs. So check them twice daily. Facts about layers is day length does influence egg production. They need 14 hours at a minimum for maximum production. About half of the year, that's going to be fine, but during the fall and winter months, when our days start getting shorter, we'll need to provide some artificial light to give them a total of 14 to 16 hours. When that daylight gets short, we're not switching the lights on after sunset. Birds will stop laying and they'll go into that molt, and it's usually late winter, early spring before they come back out of it. But by adjusting that light, you can keep them laying year round. So once you've decided what chicks you're going to get, and you've placed your order, and your chicks are going to be mailed to you unless you buy them from another source. Our hatcheries, and I wanted to mention too, I didn't get it built into the talk, but 2 hatcheries, one in Georgia is Bob's Biddies. You might want to make that note, Bob's Biddies down in Ray City, Georgia. And then one out of Iowa that I've had some good luck with is McMurray Hatcheries. Murray McMurray, I think their website is mcmurrayhatcheries.com, and Bob's Biddies, I believe, is bobsbiddies.com. But when you get your chicks, you're going to have to provide a warm environment for them. You'll want to have some type of a container, or make a container out of a piece of corrugated cardboard. A 6-foot ring of corrugated cardboard will be sufficient for about 50 chicks. Fill that with a good bedding material, either pine shavings or sawdust works really well. And be conscientious of your heat. Get it set up and functional. Before you receive your chicks, put your thermometer. I wish I could find a better pointer. I think I actually turned on my PDF instead of my PowerPoint slide, but I'm not going to back up. So some type of containment. You see the picture on the left has just got a big tub, a big rubber tote, and there's a light hanging up here. I don't see the thermometer in here, but the second photo, you can see the thermometer. So you'll want a heat lamp placed fairly close, and you'll want to monitor that temperature and have that heat in this draft shield at 90 to 95 degrees, and you want to keep it there for the first week. You'll begin dropping that temperature down by raising the light up just a few inches each day, or each week rather, and you'll do that for several weeks until you finally hit 70 degrees. And by that time, your chicks would be old enough that they could likely go into their coop. You'll want to adjust the light while they're in this brooding chamber, at least 14 hours per day, and then enough space. And those little chicks don't need a whole lot of space. As I said earlier, that 6-foot corrugated cardboard will hold 50 chicks quite easily. In terms of a coop, that housing is important to provide protection from weather, predators, reduce their injuries, as well as protect the investment that you have. Predators, likely the #1 reason to keep your birds in a coop, that and for contribution it makes towards biosecurity. Your birds need at least 2 square feet per bird. If you want to give them a little more, 3 to 3.5 per bird would be acceptable. And those larger breeds, 4 to 5 square feet for those larger birds. As far as access to their food and water, several waterers or feeders, but in terms of linear inches, 2 to 3 linear inches per bird will give them plenty of access to feed and water. We'll need that source of light, of course, sunshine, and then our added light, and then well ventilated to help keep things dry and to keep ammonia odors at a minimum. You'll also do that by your sanitation methods. So good ventilation in your coop. I encourage you to build a coop and keep them cooped up. Keeping them cooped also reduces their interaction with wild birds, especially waterfowl. Waterfowl are carriers of avian influenza. They carry it. They do not express the symptoms, and that is a common source of backyard flocks being introduced to avian influenza. So a coop will help minimize that exposure to those migratory waterfowl and wild birds in general. Few slides on nutrition. Certainly, you want to store your feed in a dry, safe manner. So establish a feed storage system that protects your feed. Feeding that out of a feeder is going to greatly reduce the waste. You'll see here in another minute that birds do eat quite a bit, but they'll also consume twice the amount of water by weight as they do feed. So if they eat a pound of food in that week, they're going to drink 1.5 pounds or more of water. And a gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. That's quite a bit. So don't underestimate the amount of water that your birds are going to need. And always, clean feed, clean water, and then your feeders and waterers are going to be cleaned and disinfected on a regular basis. Two of the common problems experienced with feeding is not feeding the right food to begin with, and then not feeding enough of that right food. Got a slide here in a moment, and folks, I'm going to send you a PDF of these slides, so don't feel like you got to make every note. I'll share with you a copy of this PDF. But make sure you get the right food, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And that right food can depend on, one, what age those birds are. With chicks, you're going to start them on a starter ration for several weeks, and then you'll transition over to a grower or a layer ration. It can also depend on what you're using those for. The majority of my comments are for egg layers, but if you're raising for meat, there's a grower and a finisher that you can find as well. Two examples of the feedstuffs in the bottom photos. You got a laying crumble in the left photograph, and the right is simply that same product but in a pelleted form. You're probably familiar with scratch feed, and scratch feed is great for chickens. They love it, but it does not provide all the nutrition that they need. It is going to be deficient in protein, generally 8-9% or so, and you'll see in a slide or two that we're going to be feeding 16 to 22% protein feeds. It is typically vitamin deficient as well, and that can lead to some problems in your bird. So scratch feed is not a complete feed, so don't just buy scratch feed. Here are the optimum nutrients for nutrient levels for our birds. If you're raising meat birds, for those first 3 weeks, they're on a 22% protein feed. After that 3rd week, you can transition them over to that finisher, and that's knocks the protein down to 19%. And you know, it's pretty much free choice. Pullets. Pullet is a hen less than a year of age that hasn't started laying eggs yet. They'll normally start laying eggs, some breeds as early as 18 weeks, most of them 20 to 22 weeks. But those pullets, you'll start them on a starter ration that's going to have about 20% protein. You'll see calcium, and I'm not ignoring that. I'm just not calling it all out. Calcium is very important to a chicken. That egg is roughly, I think that egg is roughly about 20% calcium, if I remember right. And that's can be as much as 2%. The egg is 2% calcium, and based on what the chicken's calcium levels are, can be about a fifth of her calcium level. So they can become calcium deficient quick. So calcium is important in that chicken's diet. So that pullet for 6 weeks on a 20% protein, shifting them over to a grower if you're going to finish them off. If you're going to have them on a layer for eggs, that laying mash is going to fall in there 16 to 18% as well. And then after 19 weeks of age, you can keep them on that laying mash, which is a 16 to 18% protein feed. As far as total amount of feed fed, layers, brown egg laying hens eat quite a bit. Their nutritional requirements are higher. So that first 6 weeks, each bird is going to consume 4 pounds of feed, not quite a pound a week. And you see the additional amounts consumed as we go down that line. White egg layers do not consume quite as much, only 3 pounds that first 6 weeks, 12 pounds from 7 to 18 weeks, and then about 80 pounds for just over the first year's life in that bird. And then those broilers, most broilers are going to take 7 pounds at a minimum of that finisher after they're started to get them out. So you're looking at 9 to 10 pounds per bird to grow those broilers out. There are different watering and feeder systems that you can choose from. Run through these pictures. Top left is a feeder. It is protected from the elements, and the birds simply come up and have a bite. The second one is a feeder and a waterer. The birds get trained to go up and peck the yellow treadle right there in the center there to get their drink of water. The picture on the upper right is a nipple feeder. The birds reach up and get a drop of water off of that drip. So easy to install, but that is a nipple waterer. Some feeders on the bottom left is a treadle feeder. Protects that food from the elements. The birds learn real quick to step up on the treadle. It raises the lid and they're able to eat. There's maybe what folks can consider a traditional feeder. Just fill the can and suspend it inside the coop. And that's suspending it is easier, more effective than sitting it on the ground, so that it doesn't get knocked over, doesn't get messed in quite as often. And then the same thing with that probably gallon size water that's shown in that bottom right picture. So clean feed, clean water, and we'll talk in a minute or two about the sanitation of it all. But it is very important that your birds get the right feed for the age that they're at. Checking with the co-op in Lafayette today, feed prices were, starter feed, depending on if you wanted an all natural or medicated, $14 to $17. The layer crumble, and these are 50-pound bags. That layer crumble checked in about $11, and a pellet at $13, and a grower finisher ration about $16. But most reputable feed and seed stores have these foods. But your birds need to eat the right amount and at the right age for their stage of growth and reproduction. And once again, scratch feed does not make complete nutrition. All right, just to make you aware that in growing broilers, especially if you're thinking you're going to sell some, Georgia and the Georgia Department of Ag has specific rules regarding small scale processing. You are limited to 1,000 birds processed per year. It does require an annual permit, will come with an inspection. There are many criteria that has to be met. One of those being refrigerated at less than 45 degrees. And then your handling practices, safe handling practices, must appear on your label. We do not have traveling processing sites. There are none of those, and no mobile processing units through the Department of Ag. So you're on your own, like the group in the photograph. There are many groups that are growing their own and processing for their own, not selling, and they will kind of do this as a group effort because more hands make for light work. And there's some equipment that you can buy, scalders and pluckers that will help facilitate that. But back to our layers, and I meant to change that for layers. You need at least 12 hours a day. 14 is a better target. Certainly enough nesting space. So again, 4 to 5 hens can share a nest box. So one nest box for every 4 to 5. And that reminder about how important calcium is. And you can give those birds oyster shells or limestone. They'll enjoy working their way through that. And, everything on a farm has got a job. And if you've got a hen that's not doing her job and providing you what you want, that's likely one that needs to be culled. So those non-producers, might be for the soup pot. A few guidelines just for how to other decisions to make your other factors to make your culling decisions on the color of their comb or wattle. When they're in good shape, it's going to be full and a very glossy red. If they're not feeling well, you can see it'll shrivel up, be dry and pale. The vent is where everything comes out of that chicken, the egg and waste products. Should be rather large, and if you ever check your vent, should be moist. And of course, those that are not, they're small and dry and puckered. That's a criteria to cull against. Pubic bones, the bones on either side of the vent, should be a thin bone to start with and should have some space for it. The wider that space, the bigger the egg that's coming out of there. And certainly a thicker pubic bone and situated too close together, a culling factor. And then on with the abdomen and their pigmentation, another more culling factors to be considered or kept in mind. Mentioned earlier that, gather eggs at least once a day. 2 times a day is better. That's going to reduce them getting broken or cracked or any soiling. So it's going to reduce that loss. They should be cooled to less than 45 degrees. 40 to 45 is the temperature that you're shooting for. That will prevent them from sweating, and any moisture that's cooler than what the egg is can allow that moisture through that eggshell, including any bacteria that are on there. Eggs do not have to be candled unless you're selling them. Candling determines that interior quality or how much airspace there is in that egg, and it is not a requirement that they be washed but if you are washing them, you want to wash them in water that's warmer than the egg is. A little alkaline detergent can help you do that. You can also wipe those eggs off with a dry cloth, but any wash water needs to be warmer than the egg. That solution that's colder than the egg can allow that egg to contract and allow that moisture and any bacteria associated with that moisture to pass through that shell. So warmer water, at least 10 degrees warmer than what the egg is. So warm water does a lot for us in cleaning, and you'll see that later on as well. As far as table grades go, that is determined by candling, and those that make AA grade have that small air cell. Then the larger that air cell gets, the lower the grade becomes, all the way down to a B grade and lower. Candling is not required unless you're going to sell those eggs. If you are selling eggs, then you are required by the Department of Ag to hold a egg candling certificate. That is a live training where you will candle 100 eggs. The department has just recently resumed egg candling training, and hopefully we will have one scheduled in Walker County in the near future. But unless you're selling eggs, that candling certificate not required. If you go into a market, certainly so, and many markets will require that you provide copies of any certificates you hold, not just egg candling. Even selling them off the farm, get that egg candling certificate. Want to reassure you that poultry products are safe to eat. Every Georgia broiler flock, and in fact, every broiler flock in the country, is tested prior to slaughter for avian influenza virus. So the risk of poultry entering our food supply with avian influenza is extremely low. Along with that, testing prior to slaughter, there are import restrictions and testing on those imports, as well as our federal inspection program, both of the first two part of that inspection program, helping to protect our food supply. As long as we properly cook our poultry, meat, and eggs, then eggs are not a source of infection from avian influenza. And as I mentioned earlier, the commercial poultry industry in this state is a large one, the #1 commodity that Georgia farmers are producing. But as long as we properly cook those, even if something got through, avian influenza is not a concern. The threat of people contracting avian influenza from birds is very rare. The cases that have occurred have been from prolonged physical contact with an infected birds. There are countries where humans live in closer proximity to their chickens than we do. So there have been some cases, but it is extremely low. There are no known cases of human infection from avian influenza from any of the strains that we have threatening our U.S. Poultry population. And then the avian coronavirus is a disease that is in human chickens only. There is not a human variant. So, you know, the picture kind of does a little disservice. You know, you show a picture of something happening and sometimes folks get the wrong impression, but read the phrase, yeah, that's cute. And I've seen this picture many times on social media. That's just a little too close for my comfort on you know, my child or recommending to you that you handle your birds. So keep that in mind. If you want to know more about avian influenza and find additional resources, then Extension's website And if you simply Google UGA avian flu, you're going to come, this will be the first page that comes up. And there are numerous resources out there for you to take advantage of. And I'm going to spend a minute or two on biosecurity before we're done. Extension.uga.edu is that website. If it doesn't show up anywhere else in this talk, there it is right there, extension.uga.edu, and then /publications will take you to our publications page. So here's our reminder to prevent avian influenza. There are numerous things that we can do for backyard flocks, and I will cover some of those with the next couple of slides. To protect not only against avian influenza, but to ensure you're getting good, healthy chicks, buy from an NPIP. That's National Poultry Improvement Plan. And the majority of the reputable hatcheries are going to be an NPIP source. So make sure, and they will put that on their website. They want you to know that they're in the NPIP program. Marek's disease is everywhere. So when you get your chicks, ensure that they're vaccinated at least for Marek's disease. Cleaning and disinfecting on a regular basis is strongly encouraged. There's more slides on that to come. Keeping those birds contained, confined in a coop is the preferred method of doing this. Your birds can live for several years, but one way to increase your biosecurity level is an all-in, all-out type of management. When you're done with your birds, all your birds leave the farm, and you're bringing in another batch. Try to have all your birds of the same age. Having various age groups can bring in problems that can be avoided by keeping them all aged the same. Avoid mixing those species. That can cause you some disease issues. Be particular about who goes into your coop. Keep that to a minimum. Certainly strangers or visitors, you know, they can observe from outside that coop, but don't allow them inside your coop, not unless they go through your biosecurity measures. Same thing with borrowing equipment. Neither a borrower or a lender B have dedicated equipment for use in your flock. If you get new birds, be sure to quarantine or isolate them for 30 days, observing for any problems. I like the graphic right here. Beware the evil that lurks on the soles of men. Our shoes and where we've been in those shoes are likely the main way that problems are introduced to our flock. So one way to avoid that, and it's not the next slide, is by a foot bath. So remember foot bath, and I'll be on that one in just a moment. But disinfecting your coop is one of the steps you'll take to keep your birds safe, and it's all waste out, new bedding in, surfaces washed with a soap and allowed to dry, and then a disinfectant applied to it. You want those surfaces, after you wash them, you want those surfaces to dry before you apply that disinfectant. Many of the disinfectants are inactivated by organic matter and in the presence of soap. So allow those washing solutions to dry, and check your disinfecting solution for their time that they need to stay on, and allow that adequate wet time for your disinfectant. And putting a disinfectant on the ground is a waste of the product, as we cannot disinfect dirt. Warm temperatures greatly improve the effectiveness of our disinfectants, so even our soaps. So use that warmer water for your washing and disinfecting. Remember that many disinfectants have an exposure time, so read the product label to ensure that you're using it safely and effectively. There are numerous types of disinfectants, the chlorine or the halogens, but remember they break down easily in the presence of organic matter. You want to use it on a clean surface. So cleaning before you disinfect is a great step. The ammonia products are also their activity reduced by organic matter in soaps, and some of them have reduced activity from hard water as well. These phenols, oh, I had the name and it just escaped me. I'm not going to think of it, but they make great foot baths. And a foot bath is, I think it's on the next slide. You'll want to have that at the entrance of your coop so that you can go through it before you go into your coop. And certainly sunshine is maybe the most effective disinfectant that we have. So as you're siding your coop, keep the location of it in as much sun as you can. Doesn't mean not to provide some shade, but certainly the sunshine does help us. And disinfecting and reducing those pathogens is more about you and the work that you do, okay? It's the cleaning and the labor going in with that cleaning, and then we get the benefit from the disinfectant and the chemicals themselves, but it's that effort that we make to clean and sanitize that does the hard work for us. Here is our slide of a foot bath, maybe the #1 way to reduce disease concerns and practice biosecurity. Simply a container that has a disinfectant solution in it, a dedicated set of footwear that you put on each and every time you visit your coop, still going through the foot bath. And that foot bath, that solution is going to break down fast when there's a high level of organic matter in it. When it is visibly dirty, you'll want to change that. That at a minimum is probably once a week. So that biosecurity greatly enhanced by having that foot bath. Disease can also be prevented because, in essence, folks, there aren't many vets that want to see your chickens. You'll see a slide for the Georgia Poultry Lab Network here in a slide or two. But preventing diseases is our best control measure. So keeping insects at a minimum, keeping varmints such as rats and rodents away from your pets. So clean and tidy. Chickens can also have internal as well as external parasites, and just minimizing, keeping those birds together in a coop and minimizing their exposure to these other factors. One of them, a great way to reduce our disease concerns. So take that integrated control, integrated pest management approach to your control methods. Certainly not doing things to encourage breeding and growth of diseases. Practice good sanitation, regularly cleaning your food and water containers, cleaning that coop out, getting rid of that soiled bedding, removing the bedding in the nest box and replacing that as necessary. Take steps to battle those rodents and other varmin. Certainly, there's some biological measures. Cats are great predators, and having one or more of those around the barn can help reduce those rodent and rat problems. And then if rodents and rats get out of control, there are some baits and single dose poisons that can be used to get that population back under control. Simply excluding them out of our coops and out of our feed, such as this treadle feeder does. Another example of a treadle feeder will reduce that access to feed. And if we're keeping things clean and sanitized, and our coop is located in a good manner away from heavy vegetation, not crowded with a lot of refuse or clutter, then those varmints are going to be minimized. So some things, some examples of what to avoid. You know, you don't want your coop to end up like the picture in the top right. Holes that can allow varmints to, rodents and rats to build their population. Seal those up, take that away from them so they're not a source. And then these are examples of safely using some bait methods for those rodent problems. Going to this slide here is a list of resources. These are publications from UGA Extension, one on nutrition, a management guide, and then the last one is on composting the litter, and all of those found through that website, extension.uga.edu. And I will share this slide so you'll have access to all of that. And then the internet as well. I have visited the majority of these websites. A couple of them I have not, but the web is only reliable as the source. So remember that, but we do list a few here. Backyard Chickens and All About Chickens are two that I routinely visit. The last one down here, if you'd like to see how an egg is formed, this is about a 60-second video that Auburn put out years ago that's interesting to watch. To see how that egg is formed. So with that, folks, that is starting a backyard flock, getting your birds, getting them from a reputable source, an NPIP, National Poultry Improvement Plan hatchery, feeding them the right food for their growth stage and their requirements, keeping them cooped, and then after about 20 weeks or so, beginning to gather those eggs. So with that, Diana and Kyle, if there are questions, feel free to let's talk about it.
I'm good. That was great. Thank you. I'm excited. I want chickens.
Good luck with the flock. That first one maybe maybe a little bit of nervousness with it, but it's usually gone after a week or two.
Right.
From previous experience, if you've got the brooder, where you're going to keep your chicks ready before you get your chicks, and these hatcheries will mail them to any place where there's a post office. So getting your birds is not a problem, but have the brooder and whatever equipment you want ahead of time, and go ahead and have that coop designed and built before your chickens arrive. Right.
That sounds great. Yeah, we're months off, but I just wanted to hear all this to have a good idea of how to prepare for everything and what we're looking forward to.
Well, I hope you have great success with it and it works out. And as you get more into it, as questions arise, feel free to reach out, and we'll help you solve those too.
Awesome.
We'll have questions.
Well, I look forward to hearing from you, Kyle.
Yeah, man. I like this slide at the end. That was hilarious. And now I'm hungry.
I laughed at that too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to thank Dr. Ritz for that one. That's one I've not come across before. But I will go ahead and remind you that it's the wicked chickens that lay deviled eggs.
Right.
Nice. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, I'll be down on Wednesday as well to see you and get the water testing stuff. But I appreciate this.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
You talked about nutrients and saying like sometimes they can be nutrient deficient, and eggs that are free range and not and all that sort of stuff should be like the same nutritional value. But feeding them different stuff gets different things. What kind of things do we need to take in mind other than just feed and stuff like that? I know Diana's thought about like, have you heard of chicken tractors?
Yes.
Let them get out and feed in the field and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
How do you take that into the mix with the other stuff? Is there any thoughts on that? And if I mean, I know that we still going to probably have to supplement some of the nutritional value of feed and things, but
well, I guess it comes down to, how patient you want to be. I am of the opinion that even with a chicken tractor, you need to provide that complete source of nutrition and let them supplement their diet with the greens and insects that they're going to find from the chicken tractor. But you don't want to depend on that as all that they're getting to eat. So it might reduce your feed cost a bit, but don't allow that to be the only source of nutrition your birds have.